Hi, everyone. Welcome to Therapy Etc. podcast. Thank you for being here today. It is Friday in LA, and I have a guest with me here today. Her name is Veronica, and I will let her share a little bit about her story and just kind of like what it is that we will be discussing. So hang tight. Let me get her in here.
Yes. Hello. How are you?
There she is. How are you? Good.
I'm doing good. And the baby
Uh,
finally fell asleep, so I'll stop swaying soon.
uh, how old is the baby?
He is 3 months old.
Oh my God, he's little.
He's tiny.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes,
Oh my
he's tiny, tiny.
goodness. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you making the time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So Veronica, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, who Veronica is.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Veronica Io. I am a California native. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and now I've moved to the San Gabriel Valley, but I'm still a Valley girl. I am a licensed clinical social worker. Um, I'm a mama, as you can see. I have 3 kids, ranging. My
Mhm.
oldest is 3.5. My little middle one is 18 months, and then this one's 3 months. So
Wow.
it's busy. Um,
Mhm.
my own experience of becoming a mom is really what led me to focus on serving mamas in my practice, but specifically mamas of color, because I realized like when I became a mom, we were living in Pasadena at that time, and all the mommy and me groups, all that stuff, there were people that didn't look like me or had my
Right.
experiences or
Oh.
anything of that piece. And so it just really drove me to kind of go in this way. Um, I am a first generation Latina. My mom
Mhm.
is from um, Mexico. Both my parents are immigrants. My mom's from Mexico, Zacatecas, and my dad
Oh,
is from Lagos, Nigeria. So that's where you get
okay.
this mix from. So I'm an
Love it.
Afro-Latina.
Uh-huh.
uh, and just I think the big thing also of like what kind of drives my work besides being a mama is I got my doctorate when I became a mama. So like I applied, had a got found out I was pregnant, had a baby, and kind of did that while juggling these 3 things. And
Uh-huh.
that also influences my work of serving student mothers, right? Because we need
Mhm.
support too. You're trying to
Mhm.
not only just be a mother, but also chase those goals and do those things. And so
Mhm.
um, that's pretty much what encompassed my day every day. There it
Wow.
is.
You know what? Like I just hear this story and just what you shared about being pregnant while you were in school, getting your doctorate. And I just think that's so like awesome. Like women are just such powerhouses because actually I have an episode coming out on Monday. On Monday, the what is it, the 24th, I believe it is, of May. And the person that I have on, she too was pregnant during her doctorate program. And I'm just
Okay.
like, people are just, I mean, we are amazing people, like really doing the work and reaching those goals and pushing ourselves. And it doesn't matter, like, we're going to have a family and also, reach those goals. So, I applaud you. That's so amazing.
Thank you. It's definitely hard work, but I think actually worth it. That's also what I would use. Not just that we're powerhouses, in my unbiased opinion, that I say that we're amazing as women, but I think also the legacy that we're going to leave behind and the work that we
Hmm.
have to put into that, and always
Hmm.
striving for that, and also
Right.
balancing, taking care of myself and all that stuff. It's a hard balance
Yeah.
sometimes.
Right, right. So you mentioned about being Afro-Latina, your father being from Nigeria, your mother being from Mexico. So how was it for you when you were growing up and these two kind of like environments really like balancing the two or just I'm curious to know a little bit about how your upbringing was and your cultural identity.
So my parents, okay, well, I was primarily raised by my mother, my grandmother, right? So that means I have very strong uh, roots in my Mexican heritage, right? I speak Spanish. A lot of the cultures, traditions that I do come from that piece. Um,
Mhm.
but even growing up, it used to be a running joke that now we do not say anymore, right? Of like, well, of being mixed. of, you're not fully Black, right? When they would use the N word, or when people would,
Mhm.
would say like, well, yeah, you speak Spanish, but you're not fully Mexican. It was like a whole
Mhm.
thing back and forth growing up on that side. My dad, he so he came here when he was very young. So he was 2 months old when they came over here. So he very much identifies with a lot, just an American upbringing, because he didn't know Lagos at all. Whereas my mom immigrated here when she was 13, 11, 13, right? So she
Mhm.
has memories of, growing
Mhm.
up there. So my dad, I didn't necessarily have a lot of influence from the Nigerian side because he grew up here. Like he
Got it.
could identify with some of the stuff that I went through. But my
Mhm.
mama was a whole different, thing. And as
Yeah.
as great as it was growing up, I do think, and it's something that I'm aware of, just when you reflect on your childhood, and also in my children. So my husband is Mexican, so in very
Mhm.
very much ways we relate to the Mexican pieces. But I'm also like, but our kids are also Black. Like there's elements of that I want them to be
Yeah.
proud of and to know of. It's you can't just overlook that, because that was a
Mhm.
piece of me that is very important, for
Mhm.
me, and having words around that, because growing up there wasn't any words about being biracial. Um,
Mhm.
there wasn't. I hear it more, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I love that. Like I wish I would have had
The
some
words.
connection. Yeah, I mean, I think the only word that I could think of is when people would say, "Oh, you're Blaxican," right? And I'd be like, "Okay,
I
I've heard it.
uh-huh.
Okay, I'll take
Uh-huh.
that." But there wasn't anything, else, at least for me growing up. And I went to school in a predominantly white community, so not only was I biracial, but also there's not many of us
Very
of color to begin.
little. Yeah, when it's so true when you say about the words, because you're right. Like I did hear Blaxican. That was something that I
Hmm.
did hear. I don't even hear that at all right now.
I don't
I
hear it
hear
either.
now, I hear biracial and I hear Afro-Latina or Afro-Latinos, Latinx.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very much new words, but it's true. Like, what would you even say when you're younger? And then how do you even explain it? Because I
Yeah.
definitely get it.
Yeah, it was tough not to have that, because, and I
Mhm.
always felt like I had to say that first, right? So when I would meet someone and they'd see my mom, very much would
Mhm.
say, because my mom is a very white passy, like she's so pale. In comparison, you guys, we're so different, right? So they'd be like, "Are you the babysitter?" And I'm like, she's like, "I'm not the babysitter, it's my
Ah,
daughter." Right?
yeah.
Because I look like my dad. I mean, I'm kind of the splitting image of him. So,
Mhm.
uh, or if I'd be in places where I'd be with other Latinos, I'd make sure to drop in some Spanish words, because when I would catch people saying stuff that, they shouldn't be saying, I'd be like, I speak Spanish. Please don't
Oh
do that.
my
Like, that's not okay.
goodness.
Just
Oh my
because you don't look.
goodness.
So,
Do
stuff
you
like
have
that.
do you remember any examples of what somebody was saying and you were like, excuse you?
Maybe not so much as a kid, but I remember, and this is kind of like when I was a teenager, I want to say high school, when I want to say, you're kind of looking more, a little bit more developed. And I'd be like
Mhm.
standing somewhere and at a store, and like the men would say things in Spanish about me, like, oh, she's so attractive, or, oh, disgusting
And
things.
not those nice words, right? Like in
Yes,
a
I don't know how
very
to, and I
disrespectful
would be like,
way.
yeah, and I'd be like, look, I understand you. Like, don't
Mhm.
say that. Or,
Mhm.
kind of like those things kind of come up. But it was, I had to kind of say, you can't do that. You can't say that. And I think there's more words to that now, right? I do think, also especially living in LA, you don't know what language people speak. You can't be busting
Can't
with
be
that
too
out.
sure. Yeah, it's true. I was
Mhm.
living in New York City for a few years, and I am Mexican. I am very fluent in Spanish. I can speak, read, and write it. I used to live there. Um,
Mhm.
and when I in New York City, Mexicans don't look like me. They don't look like you. They look
Mhm.
very different. It's a different
Mhm.
part of the country. I mean, Mexico's huge, and so it's a different part of the country that migrates to New York.
New York.
And so they would never think that I was Mexican ever. They couldn't even like place me as to where I was from.
Mhm.
I remember getting into Ubers and the person would be really struggling trying to say something in English to me. And I would just bust out the Spanish and they're like, what? Like, you
Yeah.
speak Spanish? And I was like,
Mhm.
sí, claro. And they're, like they're just so amazed. Um,
Mhm.
or just like, and I don't look white at all. I don't think I have any white features, but they would say, okay, well, she doesn't look, I don't know what she is. She doesn't look like Dominican or Puerto Rican. So
Mhm.
I guess she just like must be white or something. I don't
Mhm.
know. So I'm just
Yeah.
gonna just speak in Spanish or say things in Spanish. And I'm like, oiga, señor, sí lo escucho. Sí
Yeah.
le entendí. And then,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then they're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned New York, I think of the first time I went to New York and I saw, I was like, oh yes, Dominicans live here, Puerto Ricans, thank you. Because in LA, we don't
Love
have that
that.
big of a community. I mean, even the
Mm-hmm.
woman who does my hair, she's Dominican, right? So that's where I got kind of my influence of like, oh yes, there's other people out there that look like me
Mm-hmm.
that are close here.
Mm-hmm.
But even
Mm-hmm.
the Dominican community is small, right? And so when
Yeah,
I
I
went to
want
New
to
York,
say
I was like,
like,
yes.
yeah, probably like 5% or less, maybe.
Hmm.
I don't even
It's
know.
it's really small, and I do truly believe that they do know each other because every time I'm in that salon, I just went on Wednesday. It's like very much like let's bring people in, like let's connect because there's not many
Mm-hmm.
of us, and so
Mm-hmm.
but it's needed again. Like that's the importance
Mm-hmm.
of talking about that because I definitely do get if someone hears me speak Spanish, they'll be like, "Oh, are you Dominican? Are you Puerto Rican?" And I'm like, "No," but I'll take the
Uh-huh.
compliment also. Like I mean,
Yeah.
they're all beautiful cultures,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so
So what about as you started growing up, how did your uh like two cultures continue like influencing you, like either in friendships, relationships, even like education?
yeah. I think so. Definitely, I have as I mentioned earlier, stronger roots towards the Mexican side, and especially culture
Mm-hmm.
wise, right? Because like the piece of like, oh, even something small of Christmas Eve is when we do our Christmas, right? Like things like
Uh-huh.
that, where you can relate
Uh-huh.
to someone about that, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely growing up would gravitate more towards Latinos. But like I said, I think also this piece of growing up in a predominantly white community, because I went to school in
Mm-hmm.
Burbank. So anyone who's from California, Burbank is y'all, it's all white. At least it was. I don't know
Now
if it's
you're
changed.
probably right. I mean, when I think of Burbank, I think of like, oh, okay, that's where they film all the TV shows and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's white. It was just white, and so there's
Hmm.
always this piece of like when I'd see another black person, or and I'm like, oh hi, like let's be friends, like let's join that. And I think especially as I continued in school, right, going up, getting my undergrad, master's, my doctorate, there is this piece of gravitating towards people that look like me, just not, to develop a community and to be like, hey, I see you, like let's be a support
Hmm.
because we need that. We're
Hmm.
stepping into rooms that weren't necessarily made for us, and we do need a community, and gravitate towards that. So that's kind of like
Hmm.
how friends have kind of happened,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Did you ever experience any? And I was actually saying this in another episode recently that I recorded where I feel like I didn't really understand more about cultures until I went to college. Like in my upbringing, I grew up in Baldwin Park, which I was sharing with you earlier. And in Baldwin Park, it's a lot of people who are Mexican and like Filipino is like
Mhm.
primarily what's kind of there. And so it wasn't until I went to college that I really like was like, oh wow, like there's a big like Salvadorian population. There's a big um Nicaraguan or Guatemalan. Like there's more than just Mexican, and
Mhm.
there's more than just Mexican and white and Filipino. Like there's much
Mhm.
more. There's black. There's different kind that or different types, whatever the right word is, but cultures, like so many different cultures.
Mhm.
And so did you? I know you mentioned that like the whole piece on like I'm not black enough or I'm not Mexican enough when you were younger. Did you notice any of that even as you were growing up in your um, teenage or even like young adult years, where it was like, where can I fit in?
Yeah, I think especially teenage, that young adult when you're wanting to fit in, right? I do want to say when I was a teenager, all my friends were practically white. I have one best friend who, her and I, but she's her family's from Venezuela, right?
Mhm.
And so it's her and I, but all of our friends were primarily white. I had one black
Mhm.
friend, but there wasn't many of us, right?
Mhm.
And then young adult, I definitely as I shared, like felt like I had to kind of say like, hi, my name is Veronica, and I speak Spanish because my mom's Mexican and I look like this because my dad's black. Like, would kind of
Ah,
always introduce myself when I would meet people. Kind of somehow that would worm its way in. But now as I've
yeah.
stepped into as an adult and feeling more confident about myself, and I
Mhm.
don't feel entitled to have to say that. I don't, if
Mhm.
catch someone speaking Spanish saying something, here I
Mhm.
am. Especially, I
Mhm.
think people do well, especially when I interact with my kids, we try to speak to them in Spanish because we want them to learn, my husband and I.
Yeah.
So people see me on the street all the time. Well, not so much in COVID because we didn't go out that much. So
Right,
before
right,
COVID
right.
with my daughter, and
Yeah,
now
prior
when
to
they see us,
2020.
yes, 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 that whole year is just a blip. But now as we're starting to kind of get out, people will hear me. They'll be like, oh, like, and that also builds community. I've met people like that too. But now
Mhm.
I feel more confident in people. Everyone's different. We don't
Mhm.
know until they tell us.
Mhm.
So you can't
Mhm.
can't assume. I don't feel like
Mhm.
I have to try to fit in so
Mhm.
much in that aspect of that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think you just brought up a great point just a little bit ago about in LA you never know, and I think that's the beauty of living in Southern California, but mainly like in LA area, that we
Hmm.
have so much diversity here. Just like even like the little like towns that we have, like Thai Town or Little Tokyo or Chinatown, Little
Hmm.
Armenia, like we have all of these little communities within the community,
Hmm.
and it's so true. Like there's so much diversity and people that are bicultural, biracial. That I mean, where
Hmm.
I consider, I really feel really lucky to. I mean, in New York they have that there, and I love being there. But I just love how I feel it's really embraced here.
Yeah, yeah. I think and it's nice to hear. I think especially with the usage of Instagram, as I'm starting to like use it more, and
Mm-hmm.
outside of just sharing cute pictures of my kids, but like to actually like connect with people and stuff. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, like there is work around this. There's more
Uh-huh.
words about this. There are,
Mm,
an increase of biracial kids or multiracial.
yeah.
They're not just kids, but adults, people, and
People.
yeah, and we're changing, and we're evolving, and it definitely has helped me feel more confident in not
Mm-hmm.
having to feel like I have to justify like who
Mm-hmm.
who I am, right? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is, if you want to ask me, very much
Mm-hmm.
come on and ask me, but
Yeah.
if not, I'm not gonna say anything anymore. We're in
Mm-hmm.
LA.
Mm-hmm. Very true. We're in LA. That's all we need to say. We're in LA. Leave us alone.
Yes.
So, you mentioned like your kids, like you definitely want to like bring in some of like your Black culture within their upbringing as well. How do you navigate, those pieces so that they also can acknowledge and be proud and own it that they also are biracial and bicultural?
We navigate it based on different things that kind of come up because as I mentioned, my husband is Mexican, so he has a big old Mexican family, right? Like,
Love that.
uh, and you can see the difference. And my daughter, I mean, they say that she looks like me, but a little bit different. And my kids, they all, I think they if you just look at them and not know their last name or anything, they look like Mexican kids.
Hmm.
If you were to just look. Um,
Hmm.
but I think the piece how they're still young, right? So I said my oldest is 3.5, so she's barely starting to have words about how we're different. So right now, when you ask her, she says, "I'm black. I'm black like my mom," right? Because right now we're like
Ah,
everything is about mom. She was exactly like mom, right? So I'm black like
ah,
my mom, and it's true, she is, right? And she also understands Spanish and all that stuff, but she doesn't have the word yet for Mexican. skin or, those things. But I think especially kids, right? Because they notice that they're different, right? Like her little friend Michael, he's white. Like, they notice those things. And so when she asks us, we just tell her. But one way that we've kind of started, and it wasn't with the intention of this, of why we did this, but now, as I gotten older, so their last name, right? So my last name is Io, my husband's last name is Sanchez. So they have both last names, it's hyphenated, because I wanted to make sure that my name did not get lost in this mix, right?
Yeah.
That was originally the reason for why it was both, but now it's like, yeah, like it's our culture, because when I do meet other Nigerians and they say, oh, is this where your family's from? Like they can pinpoint where I'm at, and about my family. And it is a goal of mine to, visit and get to know more. And I wish I would know the language, but it's not something that kind of happened. But there's a reason for why I want both last names there. And that's just kind of how we're doing that. And, establishing our family is that we're not just one, right? Because if we were all Sanchez, another reason I didn't change my last name, right? Like I'd get lost.
Very true. I definitely see what you're saying. And I like that. I like that you're just, you're trying to, or you are bringing in that Nigerian culture, which is so beautiful. I'm thinking of Molly from Insecure. Have you seen that show?
Yes, I love her. She's hilarious too.
Love her. Oh my gosh, she's so funny in that show. But like, I follow her on Instagram, and just like, she wears some of like I don't know if they're traditional pieces or not, but they're just so beautiful. Like some of the clothing that she wears, representing her Nigerian culture, and just really being so proud. Like, I'm a Nigerian woman on like an HBO like show. And just the pride.
Yeah, and there is, and I, it's one regret that I have in my life, that I didn't step too much into knowing that of, that culture. Because like I said, my dad came here when he was so young. So it was very much, both my parents came during the generation of like, just speak English. Just don't talk the other language, right? But my mom came here older. So by 11, you already know Spanish. Like there's nothing you can kind of, it's in there, right?
It is what it is.
It is what it is, right? So she came, a little bit just different. But my dad came here very young, and his family, or, my family, we're trying to be very successful, owning businesses, doing these things. And it's very much like, let's just assimilate into, this. And like,
the
even
culture.
And I mean, I think it's just a survival, thing. You don't want to, already he's a black person, a black man, okay, growing up, like already he's that, right? Like he's just trying to, and his family was just very much trying to, assimilate. So things like that, like language, I have never heard him speak Igbo, which is the language that my grandmother spoke. But
he doesn't know, yeah, he probably doesn't know it because he was.
Well, he does know. So growing up, he would respond. So similarly to how my daughter, like I'll talk to her in Spanish and responds back to me in English, and we have to be like, no, please respond back to me in Spanish.
Habla en español.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing, like, so I would hear my grandmother kind of say whatever she would say, right? And he would respond back in English, because obviously she speaks English, she was a nurse here for many years, and so she spoke English, but it's kind of that thing. So I never heard him. I have never yet. I know he understands it.
You should challenge him. You're like, Daddy, show me a few words.
Show me something, But I also wonder if it's kind of a thing of he just doesn't know how to speak it, right? It's like some people that can like understand Spanish but have struggle with like saying words. It might kind of be, similar to that. And then, my grandmother passed away last year, and I kind of, I was looking through her pictures and looking through all this. I'm like, oh my gosh, my regret is I wish that I would have like pushed more to kind of know that. And it's kind of coincides with, it's not till you become a mother, at least for me, till I became a mother, that I was like, what's my legacy that I'm going to leave? What do I want my kids to know? That I'm like, oh, I should have,
The internet is very powerful though. Like, I feel like you can find some gems in there. Like you can probably find a few cousins like
I think
tios,
that I
you know, like,
can.
or you know what I mean? And
Yeah, I
like
think
bring
I
you into the
can.
culture.
Something, I'm doing immersion or something, because
Mm.
when of Nigerian friends that I have, it's beautiful culture. It's beautiful, and there's some elements that I didn't even know were true of Nigerians. So like the first one I can think of is, when people meet me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you've done so much schooling, you're so successful, right?" And then they know that I'm Nigerian, and they'll say, "Oh, well, Nigerians are actually the number one immigrant group in the United States, are the most educated across the board, like Nigerian
Oh,
Americans, right?"
I didn't know that.
Right. So they'll say that, and I'll be like, "I didn't know that," and they're like, "Well, yeah, they instill this, this, and this." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that was my grandmother." Right. But I didn't get that.
They're like, no wonder you're successful, girl. You're Nigerian. It's in your blood.
I know. I'm like, and I'm named after her and everything. So anyway, so that's just a long-winded thing of like, yeah,
Oh my
I
God.
missed it when she was here on Earth, but definitely in her, to honor her legacy, and as I pass on for my kids of,
Mhm.
hey, I gotta learn and teach and have words for it too, right?
Yeah.
And if I don't
Yeah.
know, speak about that, because
Yeah.
we're just getting new words slowly but surely.
Yeah. I'm just really over here like you need to challenge your dad like one or two words a week. The two
I
of you
know.
can like learn it together.
I know we really should. We really should. Well, hopefully, yes. Now I'm gonna try that. I'll let you know. The
Yeah, for real.
challenge.
Let me know. I know, like tell him, Dad, I'm gonna challenge you to this. Let's do a little
I
competition.
know. This is how we'll remember your mom or my grandma. That's how we'll do
Yeah.
it with words.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna start wrapping up, but I'm curious to know, like, okay, so what are like your top Mexican dishes that you like?
Chilaquiles, like
Mm.
number one. But how my husband makes them, like I'm not gonna
Okay,
lie,
just
like
like with egg, like breakfast style, or
breakfast style. He makes
like
it.
dinner, like lunch style.
No, no, he makes it breakfast style, and they're
Hmm.
amazing. So that's
Hmm.
number one. Like on any
I'm
given
like,
day, that's just number one. And then a close second is my grandmother's mole, but only her mole. Like it's good. Like it's good. Or
you're
her
like nostalgia over
I
it.
know. Or her tamales. So it's those are
Tamales
two
de
close.
qué?
She makes them well de carne, but like the sauce that she uses is, I don't know, man. Like it's just, oh man, I'm gonna call her after this and be like, "Hey, grandma, I know that you
Like,
just got back from Mexico, but me haces unos tamales."
damn, girl, that's hard work. I only
It
get that for
is.
Christmas.
And that's the thing, is that I feel guilty. Here she is. She's 85, and yeah,
But I
y'all can
bet
judge
you
me.
she'll do it.
She
I
will
bet you
do
she'll
it.
be like, I'll just do a little bit for you.
She will, right? Especially if I bring the kids, she's like, "Oh, okay, pues,
But
you
you'll
need
see.
it." I mean, and they
Okay.
don't even eat it, but it's for
They're like,
me.
this is for me. This is for me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So what about Nigerian dishes? Do you have any that you have tasted or that you like or maybe you want to learn?
No, I have no,
Oh, we need
no
to get
things.
dad in here. I feel like
I
I need to have him
know.
in here with you.
I know. I think, and the thing is the things that come up, I have a memory of a dish that my grandmother used to make. It's kind of like but I don't know its name or what was in it, but I have vivid memories. And each time I've been pregnant, that is the dish that I have craved. But my grandmother was a little bit too older to be making it for me.
Uh-huh.
But it's this rice, kind of like stewish thing with these specific spices. And my dad has
Mhm.
said, like, yeah, that's a Nigerian dish, but I don't know what it is.
Oh,
So
you know
can
what?
picture it. Mhm.
Living in LA, I'm sure there's a Nigerian restaurant
Oh,
somewhere.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And I think once I get over getting out in the world, we'll
Yeah,
see if I'll check it out.
we'll do a little taste test together.
Yeah. Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Veronica, it's been so awesome having you here and just sharing about your cultural identity and just your upbringing and how you've been navigating the world, being an Afro-Latina professional, a mommy, a daughter. So, I mean, it's been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, given that you have all of these responsibilities, how do you take care of you?
Running. I love to
Ah,
run. That is, any
okay.
problem can be solved in my run. So like if I'm
Uh-huh.
in a dilemma, I got It depends. I mean, I'm getting a little bit slower with these kids as I push them, but 30, 40 minutes that I go on a run, that's kind of how I take care of myself.
Nice. Do you do
Yeah.
any like races?
I used to,
Mhm.
marathons, all that stuff, but
Nice.
I don't know. Now with being around so many people so close, I don't know if I'll get back to that. But yeah, I did actually did my I think my last marathon I went to Berlin with my daughter, so it was only her. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, that one I
Wow.
did. So because it
That's
got derailed
amazing.
because I got pregnant with her the first when I was pregnant, so I couldn't run a marathon. Obviously, you can't go across the world when you're pregnant.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so that was the last one that I've done. So
Wow,
been
that's so awesome
a
though.
while.
Wow. So I'm a runner myself. I've done one marathon, and then after I did it, I said I will never do this again in my
And you meant
entire
it.
life.
And you meant it. You like because I say that all the time when I cross.
And
Every
then
time I
and then and then I signed up for another one.
oh, what are you gonna run?
I'm supposed to run the LA Marathon this year, and I should be training like right now.
You got a little bit, but yeah. You should start
Yeah,
training.
I need to give myself at least 5 months to start training, and I'm just like, I don't think I want to do it anymore. Yeah, yeah,
What was the first marathon you rode?
here in LA also, so both
Okay.
LA.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and we
Ya
do
no
the
quieres.
whole no, ya no, ya me cansé. Yeah, the last one that I was gonna run, I was gonna do the Nike Women's Half Marathon, and then it got canceled due to COVID. I was so excited for that race. I'm like, let's do this half marathon. I got this. 13 miles, no big deal. But then it got canceled. Now I'm like, como que ya no quiero.
It's hard to get back into it. Like you have to have a certain mentality to run a marathon. And like each time I've run it, it's one certain thing that kind of keeps me going. And
Yeah,
I don't know if I have that in me right now. So that's
yeah,
okay. But you go,
yeah.
girl. I'm gonna cheer you on.
I'm trying to get out of it here. My friends are like, okay, so they just rescheduled it for September, and I'm like, I feel like I'm busy that weekend. I don't think I can do
You
it.
don't even know what weekend it is. You're like, I can't.
Oh my goodness. Well, Veronica, I know you mentioned that you have your practice. So where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, or maybe just curious about, if they identified with anything that you shared? How can people find you?
So on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Veronica EO. So my
Hmm.
last name spelled EYO, Veronica
Hmm.
spelled traditionally.
Hmm.
And then you can just find everything there, linked to my website. And I'm loving connecting with people. That's
Yeah.
such a pro of COVID. I
Hmm.
never used Instagram before as a way to connect with people in that way. Besides, like
Uh-huh.
before, I would just the people that I knew, share pictures of my kids. But now I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, there's other people out there connecting. So I would love to connect with
Yeah.
anyone through Instagram.
Yeah. Perfect. And I will link her things in the bio just so anybody that's watching or hearing us can easily access it. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate it, and I look forward to more conversations with you and I soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Be on the lookout for more episodes. Take care and have a great rest of your day. Bye.